Sevendials have an album, a crash course in catastrophe. You have heard tracks from it in the previous weeks. My goodness me. You know I'm excited about this project, but what is absolutely wonderful is that Chris Connelly, Mark Gemini Thwaite, and Big Paul Ferguson have come to join me now on this call. My goodness me, as we'd say in Northern Ireland, that's fucking magic.
Magic here too, mate.
Oh, it's so good to speak to you guys. But
Awesome.
listen, here's the thing. It's such a great little project. And Mark, if I ask you first, okay, what was the catalyst for you three to get together to have and release an album?
It's kind of been a slow, organic process. Yeah, me and Paul were working together on some of Paul's solo material. I don't know how many years ago it was now. 2017 maybe even older than that. And so we worked together on Paul's solo records. At the same time, Chris and I worked together on a Primitive Race recording, which featured various different singers and musicians. And Chris and I carried on writing as well. And so it just seemed very natural to invite Paul to, hey, Paul, do you want to add your drums to like these ideas we've got? And Sevendials was born.
Chris, I would ask you, as I say, you and Mark had previously worked together on a couple of different projects, and it sort of kept on going. You had the singles that were released in 2020, which were great. You had How Long and Covert, which sounded fantastic. I'm wondering, when was the decision thinking? At that time, did you think, oh, I think that we should be working together again? And had you had an idea of what Sevendials were going to be?
Not at that point, but you were correct. Yes, we'd written a couple of songs, or I'd put vocals to songs that Mark had written, and I really liked the way Mark writes. I like his tunes, and so it kept, I think, nagging the both of us at the back of our minds. And then, during COVID, nothing much happened, but we picked it up again later. We'd written, the skeletons of 2 or 3 of the tracks on the album together, and then we all were all off doing our other things, and then it came back together again. Let's write some more songs, and they were as inspiring to me as all the other songs, and so we just kept going. So yes, slow and organic with a break in the middle.
One of the things I love about the record is that the three of you, as being musicians, are able to bring your whole sort of vibe to each song. And I can hear bits of a lot of previous, projects that you've been involved in. And especially, I think when I knew that Paul was playing drums, I don't know whether it was because I knew Paul was playing on the track, but I could hear those tribal, wonderful drums. And Paul's got such an original sound, I think. It just seems to work so well. Paul, when did you get involved in the project?
Well, I was out on tour doing the usual sort of thing, day in, day out. And Mark sent me this one track that Chris had sung on, Where the Wolves Fuck. And just asked me, would you like to play on that? Which of course I said yes, because I'm a huge fan of both of these guys. There's Chris and I haven't done anything together since way back when we did Murder Inc. But I'm a huge fan of his lyrics and his vocals. So of course I was going to say yes, just send it to me. And I put some drums down, and Mark is not only a great musician, guitar player, but he's a really good producer too, and very very easy to work with for me. So, you know, he was juggling my drums around a bit, and I'd sort of, you know, here are some drums, I'll move on. But then when I heard what he'd done with them, it was like, wow, this is great, you know, this is really great. So, you know, I then got into the LOE sort of thing, you know, involved in that. And when, you know, when Light of Eternity's first EP came out, there was a little bit of downtime for me. And Mark got in touch with me again and said, you know, we've got some more stuff. Would you care to put some drums on it?
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it's just like, you know, for me, it was like stepping into a comfy pair of shoes. You know, it's just like this all works. You know,
oh, I love that.
And you know, the thing I've got to finish here. The thing that kept me going, other than the music being quite different to what I'm used to, was Chris's lyrics. Just they've got a mystique about them that just like I want to hear more of this.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm sorry, I haven't got it written down. The last single that you
Zodiac
had,
Morals?
yes, had such great lyrics. I really love that.
Between the constellations and brought down to earth the sorrow myth connects zodiac morals. The name of it escapes me as it tries hard to replace tomorrow, unanswered inside two zodiac morals. A clustered slope of horoscope survivors levitates with deep fear divers. Gods will quarrel, zodiac morals. Light distracts the stars with something brighter than themselves they have to borrow. Disconnect, zodiac morals. Miss the bay of hunting stars we jealous jewelers are, and the supernova second best your comet scars. Oh, come on, relive ascension, map the stars with me. The guidelight never find night on your face to see. Clear the way for the light beyond inside. All that listens glares at you open wide.
But listen, Chris,
Yeah.
you see now this is when me as a serious journalist is going to probe you deeply, because I'm going to ask you for a favor, please, Chris, is that I would like you to pick the first song from the record that we're going to play, but I want you to tell us, why do you want us to play that song in particular?
You know, my favorite is The Place Where the Wolves Fuck. I think musically and lyrically it's my favorite song on the album, and I just find it very visceral. I find it very isolating in a way, because you know, the place where the wolves fuck is way the fuck out there, man. It's on the tundra, way on the tundra somewhere where we should not be. That's what it's meant.
I can't think of a better answer. Here's the song.
I want to go where the
listening to the Diamond Dave Show here on Total Rock. I'm talking to Sevendials, which is Chris Connelly, Mark Gemini Thwaite, and Big Paul Ferguson, and I'm having an absolute ball, I have to say. Funnily enough, Paul had brought it up a little bit in his first answer. Is that Mark? You sort of produced the record as well, and that's an awful lot of work, to help with the writing and stuff. And I'm wondering as well, when you are a musician who is producing the whole work as well, are you able to step outside the project and to look at it as a whole and not become so totally obsessed with it that you're thinking, oh, I just want to change this bit, or oh, I just want to change that bit? How were you able to do that, produce the work as well?
It's pretty difficult when you're in the thick of it to step back. Sometimes, it's like being in the eye of the storm, and it's kind of hard to step away from that when you're 10 hours into a mixing session or something like that. But what the benefit of the Sevendials material was, as Chris mentioned, we started writing just before the pandemic, and then when and we'd done like 2 or 3 songs, or maybe 3 or 4 were in various stages of completion, and just demo stage, and having that break. Yeah, we all took a break during COVID, and it's kind of a depressing time. Didn't really feel like working on too much, and touring had ground to a halt. When we came back to it, I'd say it was last year. I came back to it and listened to the work that we'd done, the 3 or 4 songs, and I was like, oh wow, because this was stepping out of the eye of the storm where I could just have totally fresh ears, and I was like, oh, this stuff's really good. This needs to come out, And I said to Chris, hey, how about we wrap these 3 or 4 up and stick it out as an EP? I remember suggesting that. And it was Chris, to his credit, who said, no, I want to do an album. Let's do a full album. And so we forged ahead. But to answer your question, it is very difficult, actually. I think the only way I can do it with this project in a way is that I've got a kind of a vision of what I kind of want to do with it musically. A lot of the ideas will stem from some of my demos. And so I'm kind of the Jimmy Page of the project. Like, I wonder if Jimmy Page would be any good at producing another band. He's great at producing his own band, and I kind of understand that because I kind of have this vision of where I see it ending up,
The number one song all over heaven. If you should die before you awake, if you should die while crossing the streets, the song that you'll hear, I guarantee, it's number one all over heaven. It's number one all over heaven. It's number one all over heaven. The number one song all over heaven.
One of the things that I loved about it was there was a couple of covers, on it, and one being the first song that I heard from the record, which is that number one song in heaven, which is a Spark song, and then you had Obsession as well, which is a mid-80s pop song. Is it Animate? Who did that one? Is it
Animotion.
That's it. That's it. And I was just wondering, Chris, how did you think to yourself, these are the songs that I'd like to sprinkle a bit of Sevendials magic upon?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, it was these both these songs. It was Mark's idea, and I 100% was behind it. I love both these songs, and I mean, to give a sort of grander answer at this stage in my career, I'm game for it. I'm game for trying out whatever. It doesn't matter to me what people think of it. Too late. Let's have some fun. And I also thought that these songs really shown in stark relief to the other songs, which are so fucking dark. These are actually Obsession is pretty dark as well, come to think of it. But number one song in heaven is just all bubbles,
Yeah.
champagne bubbles, you know. So
Well,
I thought it would be,
yeah.
I thought it was a really nice addition to an otherwise really dark record.
I
Yeah,
was,
it was my fault. I suggested them, but it's actually Chris's fault if we really need to on it, because Chris was the one that was like, no, I want to do an album. And for me, the quickest way to get to the end result of, you know, getting to like say 10 tracks was like, okay, let's do some covers. And I'd had this reminder in my calendar going on for a few years saying, you know, heavy version of Sparks, you know, #1 song in heaven. And it was like a reminder that would happen once a month. And I'd just ignore it and ignore it. Who the hell am I going to cover that song with? You know, really. And it just was in my reminders. And before you dismiss that as a kind of a whimsical thing, my previous reminder to that, Dave, you'll appreciate this, was to do a heavy, dark, brooding version of ABBA's Knowing Me, Knowing You. That was my previous reminder, and as you know, I ended up doing that.
absolutely.
On my solo album with Vile Valo, and no, I then added the Sparks was another inspiration. Just in my head, oh yeah, I hear this kind of heavy and like, you know, like keeping the intensity and upbeat vibe of the original, but just, you know, powerful. And so when it was like, oh, Chris wants us to do a whole album. All right. Let's just add some covers, and the Sparks one was just a monthly reminder, and I'm really glad we went for it, because I don't think there's many vocalists that could have approached it the way that Chris approached it, you know?
Absolutely. Speaking of vocalists, sorry, Mark, to interrupt you. Speaking of vocalists, you had a rather impressive vocalist lending her vocal skills in the other song we were talking about, Obsession, because Ashley, your partner, fantastic. I mean, my goodness me, she sounds absolutely wonderful in that song.
Yeah, very, very a beautiful, organic happenstance. You know, I suggested the Obsession cover as a second cover because I'd always loved that song for years, and I heard it once again in the Maxine soundtrack last year, the movie Maxine, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to do a heavy version of that, and Ashley DJs, my wife Ashley Bad, she DJs, and so I was like, oh, why don't we do like a more heavy sort of industrial remix of that track? And I kind of helped her create a remix of it, and that kind of created the like arrangement for the idea of doing it as a cover song, although at the time I didn't realize that was going to happen. And then I was like, oh yeah, we could get Chris to sing on this, and it just seemed like a very obvious thing to say, hey Ashley, why don't you sing on this, the female parts, because you know, she's right here. I mean, it was easy, you know.
It was easy. Now, Paul, you may have noticed a couple of minutes ago, I said to Chris that I wanted him to choose a song from the record that he thinks the listeners might want to hear. I wonder if you could do the same for me. If there was a song from the record that you thought, do you know what? I really like this. It can be for any reason, but which one do you think your choice would be, Paul?
I've got a problem because I've got roving favorites.
Huh?
Yeah.
But I'll choose Corrupted Verse for now. And I'm not going to give you a reason other than I'm really digging the song.
Listen, I'll tell you this, Paul, that's as good a reason as ever. I'll tell you. Listen, here is more from Sevendials.
The corridors are endless, they always take you back to one. Follow the trail of the rust flake from your youth.
have to say, gentlemen, I'm enjoying this chat. I'm enjoying it immensely. Did you guys, if I ask Chris maybe, did you guys, have you ever been in a room together playing, or was it just a simple thing that you recorded your parts all separately? You know, I was just wondering if you know, how the record was got together.
It was all remote. You know, and I mean that's some pandemic damage there. Like during the pandemic, I really, and everyone else who's a musician, jumped on being able to work remotely with people. Thank God, because otherwise, it would have been really, really boring. But so I like working remotely. I like working on my vocals alone and just at the time of the day that it suits me, you know. That's one of the great things about working remotely. But, you know, we had not been together. It was very, I mean, I'd met Mark a couple of times and obviously I knew Paul from way back, but we've not actually, it's actually a thing that's missing, like sort of the social thing that you get with the band and stuff like that. But that's the same for many, many bands these days, you know. But it would be good to be in a room with all of them at some point. That'd be great fun. But right now, it's in this dungeon I'm in.
One of the things that I really loved about the record, and I thought it was just a lovely touch, and with the press release as well that it came out, Mark, is that the album's dedicated to two different people, and obviously Geordie was one, and also with Mont being another person who obviously did so much great things with Killing Joke. It was so lovely to see that with this record you were able to say and tip your hat to these wonderful, wonderful musicians and people, and also the way, Mark, that you described your guitar. It was as if you were doing a Geordie on it, and you were thinking, how would he have approached this song? I thought it was such a lovely way to tip your hat to some special people.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, it's nice. I've never made any secret of Geordie being one of my favorite guitar players, and even working with Paul, I would joke with Paul when we'd be working on Paul's ideas for his solo album. I'd be like, "Oh, I kind of went a little bit Geordie on this one. Is that all right?" You know, so I felt a bit nervous about it. But I think even famous guitarists, you know, have their influences, and you know,
Absolutely.
Geordie was one of mine,
It,
and
it, Curious
Monster.
enough, Mark, sorry for butting in, but just you know, I went to see the Led Zeppelin film, and we talked about, you know, when you talk about Jimmy Page talking about the people that influenced him, it was absolutely wonderful, you know, to see that, you know.
Yeah, he loved like Link Ray and all that stuff, you know, Jimmy Page. And, you know, and with Mont actually really got deeply involved in my first solo record. So I kind of got to know Mont through, I was touring with Peter Murphy, and he was hanging out with us and we became friends. And then it was Mont that suggested to Paul that I work with Paul on Paul's like solo track that was going to be on a limited edition vinyl, and that kind of kick-started Paul and I writing stuff for his solo stuff. And then I enlisted Mont to help me with the artwork on my first solo album volumes. He helped me with a couple of the videos, producing those. He also got involved with Paul producing some of his videos, and it was very organic. And so yeah, when we lost Geordie and Mont, you know, within a year of each other, it was really quite a blow to
Well,
us all.
it was lovely to see it, and it's rare as well that on a press release, you know on album credits and stuff, with the press release saying sending the love out and I thought that was absolutely lovely. Chris, a crash course in catastrophe is a wonderful title, and it's also got a wonderful sort of visual aspect to it. And you know, you had the little video that was made, and I was wondering, it seems like the band who get their name from, if I had this written down, from a part of a 19th century part of the West End, which was quite an interesting area, to say the least.
Hmm.
It's so lovely that it seems that Sevendials have got an aesthetic already to them, if you know what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah, you know, the name Sevendials was suggested by Mark. Was it by you, Mark?
I think
I
it was
think.
cool. I thought it was
Okay.
cool.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
I, you know, I didn't. I loved it, and then I knew Sevendials, but I didn't know anything about the history, and it was kind of fascinating, and that's why we ran with it because it also had an aesthetic to it as well. I mean,
I was wondering, Paul, you know, where did that? It seems such a lovely concept, you know. And I was just, what was your inspiration then? Was it something that you read about it, or maybe seen some
No,
history?
not at all. We were searching through a long list of names. We each presented, I don't know, 15, 20 names, and sort of scrolling through, seeing what would work, what's taken already, because
yeah.
everything's taken, everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly what made me think of that, other than well, we're all British.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm a half caste. I'm half Irish, half Scottish, and whatever. But no, I spent a lot of time living in West London, and would pretty much go to Covent Garden, Sevendials, almost every day. You know, for whatever reason, there are music stores there. It was just a place that I used to frequent and still visit when I go back to London. The British Museum is nearby. Another reason
That's
to
right.
go.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just popped into my head, and I thought, you know, that's got the sort of familiarity to us all. Just the London vibe.
It's funny.
And having proposed it, you know, Mark
It
and
it
Chris got on board.
I just think it fits beautifully. It's funny that it's one of those things about London is that you realize what an amazing place it is once you've moved out of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm the, you know, and that sounds, you know, but we've all lived, you know, there,
Yeah.
and I think it can be incredibly busy, but it's got such a multicultural, you know, London's great. Just a wee bit too busy for me sometimes, very busy. But there you go. Now listen, now this,
Excuse me, it's also a warren,
yeah,
you know, and so it's so easy to spend days, you know, even if you've lived there for a long time, getting lost in places that you've never seen before.
yes.
Mhm.
When you couple that with the history of the city, you know, going back beyond Roman times, you know, when you know it was an early English settlement and so forth. The history is just palpable
Yeah.
and a great source for inspiration.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah,
know,
did some reading up on it, and yeah, the history of Sevendials, and it turned out to be a really sketchy area. You know, like back in the 18th century, it was not a place to be caught out in after dark. You know, full of villains and all sorts. And we were like, oh yes, you know, this is really great, great. Yeah, the whole Victorian London and imagery of it being a dodgy area and like dangerous, and we were like rock and roll.
Absolutely. Now, listen, my last question, and I think I'm going to ask Chris. And I ask with bated breath because I think I know the answer, but would we ever be in a situation that we'd have a Seven Dials show? Could we ever hear these songs in a live situation, or is it just you know, the planets have aligned recently? I don't know whether we'll be able to get them aligning again. Is it? What do you think?
Get your wallet out.
I thought we could do it like ABBA, you know, like the ABBA have got like projected like avatars of themselves on stage, right? Isn't that in London or something? That sounds like
I made some puppets.
yeah.
You know, playing to play live is it's more difficult for me than it used to be. But at the same time, never say never. If the situation is right, and speaking for myself, then I'd love to. It would be great. We could be in the same room together. Wow.
Yeah, well, listen, that sounds brilliant. Mark, I wonder if you could tell us the final song from the album that you would like the Total Rock listeners to hear, and tell us why do you want to hear that song?
I think I'm going to suggest. Well, I was going to suggest. I mean, I would suggest "Obsession" if you haven't played it already, because that one, we're looking at that one to be a future single. Or if you're looking at an album cut, I've always been partial to "Whispering Wand." It
Yeah,
starts
that's a good
off
one.
as this little, whimsical, almost sort of dancey kind of song that morphs into this beast, And so that one is a deep cut that I think people will enjoy.
Because you are such a lovable rogue, Mark, I think during this show, I think I will be forced to play them both. So is
Excellent.
here is some more music from Sevendials.
Can't keep the wind from my door like a stranger, walking uninvited, willing this change. Can't move the ghost from my room to the outside, never more scared, it's nobody's night. Whispering one, shivering wounded, walk to the voice and live in its void. Shadowing states, staggering nameless, digging new grave when the others destroyed. Don't wanna share the gift or the magic, obscured by staring, whispering one. Make the void, shadow inside destroyed. Dancing from the sky is a plaything, close to the heart but never beyond. Make the void, shadow inside destroyed. Make the void, shadow inside destroyed. Make the void, storms to the left and cliffs to the right side. All will be lifted straight in the
On an interview, all at the same time, I felt it was important for me in my journalistic style to take the opportunity to talk to them all about something slightly different. And if I start with you, please, Paul, because the Light of Eternity project that you sort of released stuff, I think it was in December. I absolutely adored it. There was 4 songs on an EP. I played all 4 songs. I'm wondering, Paul, how did that project come into being? I mean, it's so good. You play with it's Paulie from Chaos 8 and Fred, who plays with the Anarchists.
The Ancients.
The Ancients. I can't even read my own
Yes.
writing.
That's okay. I was getting tired of waiting for Killing Joke to finish off their next album. And actually Killing Joke's first A&R person, Alec Byrne, got in touch with me on Facebook out of the blue, because I haven't spoken to him for decades, and said, a friend of mine, Paulie Williams, has got this song that I think you would sound great on. Would you do something? Yeah, of course. I put drums on that and sounded good. And that started a relationship between me and Paulie. And I had a bucket full of demos that I sent over to him. He enjoyed them. He sent me some back, and that was the beginning of it. So we got backing tracks together, demos, whatever. And Paulie asked me, who's going to sing on these? And funnily enough, the first person that came to mind was Fred, who I've worked with before. but also in the back of my head, I was thinking, well, I'd like to ask Chris Connelly. But I didn't. Sorry, Chris.
That's fine.
I asked Fred
All
first,
worked out.
and thankfully he said yes. And in a way, I mean, Chris and Fred are my two favorite singers. So you know, that either one of them should say yes was like, phew, okay.
It's a Chris Connelly, you scamp, because I had in my mind that I was going to talk to you about something else than Sevendials, and I was actually going to look back when you had written about your time in music and stuff like that. But then, because I follow you on Facebook, I saw that you have got a rather wonderful project, White Phosphorus. Chris Connelly plays throbbing gristle.
Hmm.
My goodness me, sir, you little trickster. When did the idea for that project come out? And it seemed, because I know what a big fan you are of
Yeah.
throbbing gristle.
Yeah.
When did that idea come?
Came late last year for my birthday. My wife got me a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I'd been looking for one for a long time. I'd actually been really inspired by a record called Saved by the Reverend Kristen Michael Hayter. I don't know if you know that record, but she made it kind of intentionally using cassettes and broken reel-to-reels and stuff like that, and I loved the way it sounded. So I got this reel-to-reel. My wife gave it to me for my birthday, and it came with some reels, right? And I put on this one reel at the wrong speed, and it was an orchestral thing, but it sounded just like early Throbbing Gristle. So I made a loop, and then I wrote to Cozy, and I said, Cozy, I think I'm going to do a record of Throbbing Gristle covers. And she said, well, if anyone's going to do it, it's you. And I was like, well, it's going to be done. And so everything on the record is basically, I put everything into my studio, my digital studio, but everything was done on cassette and the reel to reel. And it's all it's supposed to sound like a sort of live recording, a cassette live recording from some dingy club in the mid to late 70s. It's exactly what it sounds like. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to do.
You know what is lovely about the three of you, right? Is that it's art. It's experimentation. Yeah, I
Hmm.
speak to a lot of bands, and I very rarely have people that I think are doing it for creation, for doing that, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So, well, listen, as I say, thank you so much for that. I'm getting sad now, Mark. I'm getting sad because it's like, the way when you've got Christmas morning and by sort of 2 o'clock you start to get a little bit sad because you know that the day is near the end. But listen, Mark, I wanted to talk to you about the Wonder stuff, okay? Because I've seen you. Obviously, you've got a big history with them. Obviously, you know that I've got a big history with them, and stuff. And I'm just wondering, what was the catalyst for you to be playing originally bass, I think, with the Wonder stuff? And how far back do you go with that band?
I mean, I remember, we're both from the Midlands. The stuff he's hailing, famously from Stourbridge. I was born in Birmingham, went to school in Lichfield. It's all the same ballpark. I remember hanging out with the Wonder stuff before they were signed in the 80s, playing at Burberry's in in Birmingham and stuff like that. And then obviously I saw them go on to have great success. I ended up joining the Mission, and back in Wayne Hussey and Miles Hunt, the frontman for Enormous, long-standing friends. They'd written stuff together, and so Miles was invited to support us at some shows we did at Shepherd's Bush Empire. 2008, we ended up doing like the Mission's first 4 albums. It was kind of a farewell thing, and they ended up reforming after that. But so Miles did that, so kind of rekindled a friendship with Miles then, and then when it fast forward to when I did my solo album Volumes in 2015, I was getting stuff for that together. I did approach Miles and say, hey, would you sing on a track? And he would come back straight. I'd send him some music, like a fully formed demo, and he'd come back straight away with these fantastic vocals. And so I'd send him another demo, and within a few hours, he came back with another set of fantastic vocals, like a demo recording. And so we ended up doing 3 tracks on my solo album together. And I said to him, we really should keep writing. And then Miles was busy doing Wonder stuff, and then he told me that he had some ideas he wanted to work on. He sent me some demos. This was maybe in 2017, 2018, and I started working on his demos, and then I sent him some of my demos. I was assuming it was for a Miles Hunt solo album, but about 5 songs in, Milo turned around to me and said, you know what? I think we got the makings of the next Wonder Stuff album here, And so I kind of was shoehorned into the Wonder Stuff just by us writing together. Miles, the Wonder Stuff had parted ways with their previous guitarist and bassist, so their lineup was fluid at this stage. And then Miles told me, we got some shows coming up with Malcolm Treese is coming back on guitar. He was the original and best guitar player, and I was like, oh, who's on bass? I wanted to kind of establish myself as being with the band and be playing live. And so I suggested to him, I say, hey, why don't you have me on bass? I've played bass on a few gigs before, not very often, but how hard can it be? It's only bass, like Sid could do. So you know what I mean? So I ended up playing bass on those shows. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I'd co-written the new album at that time with the Wonder Stuff called Better Being Lucky. There was a bunch of my songs on there, and I'm playing all the guitar parts. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be playing bass on like the songs that I co-wrote. I want to be playing the guitar parts. And so on the next tour, I then flipped onto electric guitar, and I've continued to be on guitar on every tour since then. We brought in Tim Sewell from that band Eat, if you remember Eat, fantastic band. And Tim and our drummer Pete Howard, they were in Eat, so it made a lot of sense to have Tim come in. And so I've been back on guitar, but I have to say I really enjoyed playing bass. And what we were doing on that 2019 tour, like we did the whole of the Wonder Stuff's first album in its entirety, and so I got to play the bass things parts live, and I just loved playing those bass lines. And unlike Mr. Eyeliner like he was, and the black dyed hair and everything, so people were like going, wow, this is like crazy. It kind of really reminded them, because the bass thing, Rob left us sadly a long time ago, but I felt like I was like carrying the torch for Rob there, for the bass thing.
Do you know what's lovely, Mark, as well, is that you add so much to it. And I tell you what, I came and saw you and reviewed the show actually as well in December, and see having the 3 guitars. It's a powerful thing. It's absolutely wonderful. So listen, it breaks my heart to say it, but my time with you is at an end. But listen, guys, Paul, thank you so much for talking to me about the 2 different projects. Chris,
thank you.
As my dad used to say, it's always a pleasure and never a chore to talk to you. And well, listen, Mark, we go back a long way, and it's absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. It wasn't too hard, was it? We
Thank
got there
you.
in the end. It was
was not.
wonderful. So listen, thank you so much. And listen, who knows what I'm going to play from the rest of the show, but it's going to be featuring these three lads that I've been speaking to. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. It's
Cheers,
been a
mate.
pleasure.